Hello, everyone. How's everybody doing? All fine?
Hey, yeah, all good. How are you
Yeah.
doing?
Cool. I'm good, thank you. Brilliant there. Very excited to be here. Hi, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. Just so if you don't know why we're here as part of Into Games Career Fair. This is an event running all day to talk to you about the different roles available in the games industry. We have amazing panelists like my colleagues here. We have also studios like Playground after us, who's going to talk to you about the roles they have available. So this panel is really about how to get into the games industry, also games into programming role, and for everybody, whether you're just curious, whether you know a lot, whether you're a student looking to get your first role in games, or maybe you're a professional working in software development who's always wanted to be a games developer and looking to transition in. So no matter where you come from, no matter what your goal is, welcome. And welcome also to our panelists, which I think we should introduce ourselves. Tim, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Tim. I'm currently working at Bolton as a journalist/gameplay programmer. I'm one of the people who are working as a software engineer in general and automotive games. So I'm kind of working my way eventually.
Thank you, Tim. You're a bit quiet on my side. I know how it is for the viewers, but you're a little bit quiet on my side. Sarah, do you want to go next? I'm going clockwise on the screen that I've got.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Sarah. I'm a game programmer, sometimes a producer, and also currently a lecturer. I'm originally from the US, which you might be able to tell by my accent. I originally actually had a degree in chemical engineering. I ended up coming very kind of sideways into the games industry, but I enjoyed doing a lot of my own stuff in a sort of hobby things like RPG, tabletop, virtual tabletop tools, and WoW add-ons and things. And I just figured out, oh, actually, this is what I want to do. So that's how I kind of got in. And I came through a traditional computer science degree and then got a master's in game technology after that. And that's kind of my educational path.
Amazing. Brilliant. Adam?
Cool. Yeah, I'm Adam. I'm the lead programmer at Glowmade, which is a small studio in Guildford. I started in games sort of like 7 odd years ago, where I was an intern at EA. And so, yeah, I was there for 5 years or so working on some really like cool projects, lots of AAA stuff, Battlefield, Battlefront and stuff. I've also, well, I was there as a programmer for most of it, but I also dabbled a bit in production too, like Sarah. So I've been all over the place a bit. So yeah.
And finally, my name's Tiffany Wild. I'm a gameplay Ubisoft Levington. I've been here for about 4 years now. Before that, I was at Codemasters working on the Formula One series. If you haven't heard my accent, I am French, but I did my education in France. Graduated with a master's in computer science, no games degree. Games degree weren't a thing for me back in the days. So studied computer science, did a couple of internship. Very lucky to got games internship in a mobile game company in Paris. Then I moved to the UK. Never looked back. So yeah, these are our panelists. Thank you very much. I think we should just get into the questions, don't you think? Let's get right into
Sounds
them,
good.
right? All right. You already started talking a little bit about this, but it looks like we've got a lot of different paths into the industry on this panel. So I think it'd be really interesting to hear, when did you start? When did you realize you wanted to make game, and how did you approach, getting into it? Sarah, do you want to go first?
Sure. So I've liked games since I was little. I've always played video games, and like I said, it was kind of I was actually working towards a doctorate in chemical engineering, but I found I was spending a bit too much time doing those hobby things I was telling you about. I was making these sort of macros, and I'd actually done a bit of like sort of traditional like simulation programming for the chemical engineering stuff that I was doing. So, and I was like, this is really fun. I just want to write programs and make things do magic on the screen. So, so that's kind of, I kind of dabbled in it and then realized it was what I actually wanted to do. And like I said, I originally went for a traditional computer science degree. And for me, I feel like that was a really good path. I got a really solid background, in C++ and data structures and all the underlying ways that things work in the computer rather than just working on the surface level, which I think sometimes is a bit of a pitfall of games programming degrees. Not that they're bad, it's just that something you have to be careful of, not just focusing on those things. And then getting my master's in games technology afterwards gave me the more specific game stuff on top of that. It was a lot of school, a lot of university, but I liked that, so that was okay with me. But yeah, that's kind of my path. And then I went and got a job at Ninja Kiwi, and I currently make my own games. I'm no longer working at a big studio, but I'm making my own stuff now.
Amazing. Adam?
So my path was slow and gradual, I guess. When I was kind of young, like sort of like 12, 13, I got into sort of Adobe Flash and starting to use, well, it was Macromedia Flash actually back then. And so I would dabble in that as a kid a lot, and started doing animation and stuff like that, and realized that you could make games in that. And that kind of led me into thinking, okay, games is kind of like a cool thing. I mean, I always loved playing games, like everyone does. And so, yeah, I messed around a lot, I got a few sort of like contract gigs, making little animations and stuff. And then when I was kind of looking at what I kind of do after sort of like A-levels or GCSEs, I was looking at a lot of like games courses, and I got lots of advice back then. And I don't know if it's changed now, but like I got lots of advice to just do like a computer science degree, basically. Like Sarah, I'll echo what you said. And kind of it was, for them, it was more important to get the kind of foundational stuff. So I was okay at maths. So I did a computer science degree. I failed my A-levels my first time, actually, which was less than ideal, but retook them and managed to get into uni and did a computer science degree, which was great. But really, I was kind of still always like, okay, I'm doing computer science. I'm not quite doing games, but there's other options. It's still just a hobby. But then for my sandwich year, I got offered to do an internship at Criterion, and that was sort of the best thing that could have ever happened. I applied, obviously, and it was, I managed to get that, and I enjoyed working in games so much more than I did education, which is slightly different to you, Sarah, that I was just like, wow, I kind of never want to leave. So yeah, I worked hard, and I sort of didn't leave Criterion for a good 5 years after I joined. So, and then, I'm here now.
Amazing. And I love that story about your A-level. That's just a proof that, you fail once, it's okay, you can retry. Failing once is just a step forward towards success. And that's an amazing story to share. Tim, what about you?
Yeah, so for me, from the very beginning, since I was like a kid, like 5 years old, I was like playing my Nintendo 64, just being obsessed with that, playing Mario Party all the time. I was like, you know what, I really want to get behind this and like develop stuff behind this. So I just did a whole bunch of research on my own, just trying to figure out how to get into games and what the different disciplines I need to learn about and all these kind of things. So eventually, when I got up to sixth form, there was no like games dedicated courses or anything like that. So the only thing I had were computing, which was great because I learned all the programming fundamentals in a pretty old language, which was Pascal, and played around with like just general like database systems and all that kind of stuff, which was great. It was a great solid foundation. And it was pretty cool to try and make, like, I went a bit crazy because I was like, okay, I really want to make games. So I'm going to try do something in Pascal that's like visually appealing. So I just started trying to draw graphs in Pascal, which was a bit of a nightmare if you played around in Pascal before. But it was pretty good. And then I actually went the other route. So I actually studied games programming course specifically. And I was kind of lucky in the sense that the first year was completely shared with computer science students as well. So you had a really solid grounding understanding in not just games, but computer science in general. And from that point, I actually had a sandwich course or sandwich year, which I then worked as a software engineer in Germany and worked there for a year. And that was like, there's so many like transferable skills as a software engineer through to games. So like, even though I was working as a software engineer, all those things that I learned and worked with in a team helped me massively years later on down the line. So after that, I graduated, and I actually struggled to get a job in the games industry. So I faced the struggle of applying, get rejected, and just being clueless on where to start and where to go. So from that point, I basically just
did a whole bunch of like game jams, side projects, worked on a big project as well. Basically just trying to give myself the experience. But at the same time, I then decided to apply for general software engineering roles. So I worked as a software engineer for the NHS. And then after that, I worked as a software engineer for like banking systems here in London. And while I was working full time as a software engineer, in my spare time, I was developing games essentially. And the side projects I'd worked on helped me get into my first games programming role.
That's incredible. And again, I also know people in your case who joined programming in games after many years where, and anything's possible, really. As for me, quite traditional path, really. Just like you, Tim, I've been playing games since I was 6. My dad bought me, it was a Super Nintendo, and I remember farming, trying desperately to beat The Lion King. It was my favorite game as a child. It was so hard. I'm sorry, but if you've played that game, it was really hard, all right? I beat it eventually when I was an adult. And then I fell in love with RPGs, fell in love with Final Fantasy IX. And when I was 13, 14, I was like, okay, I want to do games. And I had been drawing. I was quite interested in mangas, and I'd been drawing since I was 10. So I wanted to do game art. I thought, hey, I want to be an artist. Cool. And I liked computers. So I wanted to do 3D art. And I found the perfect opportunity, a summer camp for children, they're quite common in France, where it was about game programming and game art. So I went, I was like, oh, cool, I can learn how to do game art, and it's going to be amazing. And they put us on Maya, and I hated it. Honestly, I hated it. I realized that, you know what, 3D art is not for me at all. I will not do that. But then the second week when I did scripting, it was ActionScript 3. I actually fell in love with the logic behind scripting and programming. I felt like it felt natural. It felt good to me to be writing code. I was like, so I came back telling my parents, I want to do games programming. And they looked at me as like, I guess you could do programming, because my dad was a programmer. But they were like, but game's not a job. I was like, watch me. I will prove you all wrong. I will become a games programmer. I will prove you it is possible. And okay, wait, here I am. It is possible. I don't know if all 3 of you also had maybe parents or teachers or anybody in your life who told you this is not a job or you can't do this, but yeah, you can. My advice to all of you watching is you can do this. You absolutely got this.
Yeah, I would totally agree. Like,
for sure.
I think it's a testament that we're all here and we're in this like great careers fair that, you know, games is a real job, and it's only getting bigger, really.
It is. Well, I'd like to get into some of the questions from the community now. We've had a few questions regarding applications and portfolios, so I think it'd be really interesting to answer this. So the first one would be, obviously, we keep recommending people to have portfolio, and in a programmer portfolio, we expect to see code. But how important do you all think that having code to read on your portfolio is? Who wants to go first?
I can take this one. So I think the important part of showing off your code is kind of to show your thinking process of why you've actually developed something in a certain way. And whoever's reading or looking at your portfolio, they want to like kind of get into your mental state of what's your experience that you've worked with and how have you tackled the solution in a really efficient and, you know, nice way. So, you know, there's the standard underlying thing of, okay, is this efficient? Is this the right way of doing things? But there's also things to think of, like, if this person is going to work on this game in the long term, how have they prepared the code in a certain way to allow it to be easily extendable or like easily changeable, depending on different decisions that are made later down the line. So I think if you can show off that kind of capability within the code snippet that you have, which doesn't have to be big, in my opinion. I think it's, if you show a main feature and you just got like a solid chunk of it, like just a function which shows like the main part or the main meat of that, with just explanations, even on my own one, I had like diagrams where I just explained, this is my thought process, this is where everything's like communicating with each other, and this is the reason behind it. If it's short, concise, and clean, then you're off to a great start.
I would agree. Like, it's better to sort of edit down your code to something that you actually want to show whoever's reading the portfolio. Don't just dump your entire repository. I mean, GitHub is great for that, and I like to browse through people's projects, but pull out stuff that you're particularly proud of, some stuff that you've actually coded. Like when I'm reading a portfolio, I don't want to read through a ton of like library code or stuff that's been copy and pasted. I want to see what you've done and what you've pulled out and what you've actually learned from that, or what you've kind of like decided to make and what decisions you made in the code from there. So yeah, I totally agree, Tim. Like having good snippets, like here's some great code that I wrote. It's does X. This is why I did it in such a way. It would be a great thing to do.
And I've not personally been on the hiring side before, but as an applicant, I've obviously put together portfolios and stuff. And one thing I would say that I noticed a lot of maybe universities or colleges don't necessarily teach GitHub or version control in general. It's something that you're expected to pick up on your own. And if you've never heard of that, or if you're getting into things, that's something that you definitely do want to have and show that you can use, because that's going to be used in every studio that you're at. So yeah, and if you need a place to start, the GitHub desktop's nice and beginner friendly. So, but yeah, I agree with what everyone else said as well.
Definitely on teaching GitHub, because when I studied in France, it was part of my curriculum. But when I did a year as a master's student in the UK, my fellow master's student didn't know about GitHub, and I was like, "How did you get to that point without using GitHub? How did you do group projects without using GitHub? Oh my God, how did you get that far?" But hey, as for me, I think brilliant answers. I'd just add that on top of what Tim said, on top of having the code there, also explain why you choose one algorithm rather than the other. For example, typically in AI, for people who want to be doing AI, okay, you choose your A star. Did you choose the A star there just because you wanted to experiment A star, which is a valid answer? Or did you analyze A star versus Dijkstra or versus something more line by line approach like a Pacman AI? Why did you choose that specific implementation? It's very interesting to know from a hiring perspective. Anybody would like to add anything before we move on? Cool. Then let's move on. So still on the application side of things, you're trying to build your portfolio, you're building your resume, but especially I think that speaks a lot to graduate or entry-level people who often get rejected because there are so many applications. So the question was, how do I make my application stand out from the crowd? And Sarah, would you like to go first?
I can. Like I said, I've not been on the hiring side, so I have a bit of a different perspective here. I know mine got through somehow. My personally, the advice I give to my students is to do a lot of things. That's one of the things I was told a lot whenever I was first going out to look for a job myself. And especially don't just have things that you did in uni in there, because especially if your uni has like a set a project that a lot of people do, then your portfolio is going to look just like everybody else's who came from your uni. So you really want to go out and experiment. But what Tim said earlier made me think about, I always tell people do game jams, but sometimes your game jam code is going to look really messy. So it may be better to, once you do a game jam, yes, do them. They're so good. Do them. They're such good practice. But go and clean up. Don't just have this thrown together code. Think about, what do I do to make this extendable? You don't necessarily have to go and extend it yourself, but think about what you would do to refine that code to make it extendable if you were going to be working with a group on it for a long period of time. So yeah, kind of those things, I suppose.
Adam, I think there was something you wanted to share.
I mean, always. No, like, I agree. You're going to see, like, when you're hiring, you're going to see like a lot of applications, especially when it's for a graduate role or something like that. And so what you're looking for is sort of, it's not so much, there's obviously the content in there, but also like you need to make a good presentation. Essentially, you need to present yourself in a way that I know exactly who you are when I'm reading your portfolio and your CV, and what you're interested in. And like, it's totally fine to not know where you want to go in programming and what you want to do right away, but at least having some idea of, like, I really enjoy, the AI side, for example, is great. Then I know kind of what kind of programming you're into. So yeah, and then to your point, Sarah, it's I dislike it when people just throw in their game jams and it's like, here's my game jam and I did it in 2 days and then there it is. You can trawl through the hacks and stuff that I did, but as a hire, I'm not going to want to do that, and it's probably not a great reflection of your actual code ability because the pressure and the kind of the time restraints. So I would say, yeah, if it's something starting from a game jam game, then that's nice, or just take a project and finish it. Have something that's tidy. Even if you call it a demo and it's not this sort of grandiose, game that you want to make, have something that's like neat and tidy and sort of wrapped up and kind of you can present as like, look, I did this and I had to make these decisions in the code and it's ready to build more upon. And here's an example of that code. I think is a great way to start. I'm terrible at this. Finishing things is not it's not easy, I understand, but it's often in that last sort of 10% where you really sort of you get a bit more experience and it's easy to start something, it's hard to finish.
You begin to regret all of the decisions that you made previously.
Definitely.
You're almost like one more bug, one more refactor. I know the feeling. Tim, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, just to go off basically what Adam and Sarah said, just, once you've done the game jam, clean it up, refactor, and just make it nice and presentable. One thing I like to do is, like with all of my portfolio pieces that I've worked with, game jams, for example, the people I've worked with in that game jam, I always encourage them to continue the project and actually make it look nicer because other applicants, they're typically in a programming role, there's not really that much of an emphasis on having something visually appealing. You want to show off your code and certain things that you've done and explaining that's great. But usually there's, there's not really a push on the visual side. And I do strongly believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I do feel like if you've got something that like a game that actually looks really nice as well, it's going to push you that little bit further than compared to other people who have just shown, like gray boxed out art in comparison, like a fully fleshed out level that just looks nice. And it shows off that, you can really work to polish something with other disciplines such as, audio or like characters or like, general art in general. Yeah, it just shows off the extra, like you've got that keen eye for quality, for refactoring, for having a high standard of code, art, and it's all consistent. So yeah, it does require, pushing others kind of like, improve their side as well, but it's totally worth it in the end.
All amazing. Sorry, go for it.
No, I was just going to say the other thing that's really useful is show other people your portfolio and your applications, like get feedback from people because you get one chance basically when you apply to that company or to that that place and they see it and there might be one thing wrong or something that could kick you out of the kind of the prospective hire. So showing as many people as possible. I know it's kind of it's scary because I don't like showing people my work or anything like that, but it's so good to do. And even find a programmer who would help you out and say, hey, I don't really understand this bit, can you explain more? And find some sort of more visually sort of artists or anyone to say, hey, can you sort of take a look at my CV? Is it good? Is the font okay? What's going on? And I'm sure an artist will go, oh, the spacing's wrong there, and can you just tidy up that font? So like really drawing on other people to help you out there, I think it's great too.
If you want your portfolio looked at, you can jump into the Discord. I know the Discord link keeps scrolling at the bottom of this. So join the Discord. I will be there after this so I can answer your question and also look at your portfolio. And I'm sure many people are happy to be reached out to and look at people's stuff and give advice. As for me, my advice for standing out, I'd actually go a little bit away from general portfolio and more into what I do as a hiring manager. I have interviewed some graduate recently, and I also look at personality. It's nice to have code, but I also want to know what you do outside of code. It's nice. I mean, if you are a code head, if you live, breathe, sleep code, that's perfectly fine. But personally, I don't. I do love code, but I do also a lot of stuff outside. I play Dungeons and Dragons, I run, I cook, and I want to know that. I want to know that part of you because we also are hiring people. I think we'd all agree that an amazing part of the games industry is the diversity of profile and how amazing each individual is. And I also think that programming is quite a creative job as well, in a certain sense. So I really want to see yourself, show what you like in programming and what you like outside. If you have an affinity for a specific genre of game, say you really like action shooter or you really like narrative game, say you want to be a visual novel programmer, then have plenty of visual novel in there, because it's also your chance to show your affinity and your interest and your personality. So definitely show yourself. Don't be shy. Don't be afraid to be who you are, because who you are as an individual might actually be what's standing you out from the crowd. And finally, and that's something I give more to people who are looking to transition into the industry from another industry, is show what you can give to the games industry that you've learned outside of the games industry, because we're a young industry. We have so much to learn. And I know some amazing people who joined us at Ubisoft who are coming from outside of games, and they've brought so much on the table. They've brought experience that somebody who's only known game wouldn't have had. So I want to know that side of you as well. I want to see what makes you unique, what makes you awesome.
It's a very good point. Yeah.
Thank you. You all made very great points. I had little else to say, to be honest. All right, so now we know everything about getting that interview, right? We know how to get an amazing portfolio, how to stand out from the crowd. You finally got that test, that famous technical test, right? I don't know if any of you ever had an interview without a technical test, but for me, I always had a technical test every single interview I've done. So what type of questions are likely to come up in a test? I know we can't give specifics about, hey, at my studio we ask this, but in general, I'm pretty sure there's going to be a lot of common ground there. So who want to go first?
I can talk about this briefly. I can't be too specific, obviously, with the test that we do at Roll 7. But I do generally want to say, when I've been applying, my general observation have been there are typically two kind of technical tests. You'll get given a game project, and then you can like just fix bugs or improve the game project, or you'll be given leak code questions. And so they're quite different. And you kind of just like different studios have different ways of giving technical tests. So you kind of have to be ready for both styles. Leak code questions, in my opinion, do take a lot of practice. So there's plenty of websites online that you can check out that have different kinds of leak code questions at different stages. My advice is always to try practice them at least like 1 or 2 a day, maybe less. And for the general like project ones that you get given, I prefer those, to be honest. They're quite like a lot more fun, and they really do show off your skill a lot more. But yeah, those are just the two main ones that you have to like kind of be aware of and be prepared for, in my opinion.
Yeah, with the code questions, the really hard ones, it is unfortunately I don't really like doing them. We don't do them at Glowmade, but like it's unfortunately a thing that some studios have, and they are hard, and like they're meant to be hard. So don't walk into a programming test not doing any sort of research or any practice, because there are, like you said, so many resources. There's some great websites out there that will compile the code straight away that from the test and tell you what you've done wrong, or stuff like that. So definitely practice. But also I would say that it's not the end of the world. Don't stress out too much if you don't know how to answer some of those questions. But don't give up. What you should do, and this is what I always look for when I'm asking sort of technical questions, is to try and like program is all about problem solving and figuring out if you don't know something, how to solve it. So if you don't know something, don't just go, I don't know, leave the question blank. Like give it a go, and really show off your sort of problem solving skills, because that's ultimately what programming is. Sort of 90% of the time is figuring out how to solve problems. And it's so different now, because most of the time when I'm programming, I just Google something. If it's if I need to know how an algorithm works like in and out, I'll just Google it, and that's just the way of the world now. But my experience, I know how to use that or why I should be using that. And so that's what I look for in sort of when answering code questions. Is you don't need to know the A-star algorithm and how exactly it works out, but you do need to know how to use it or why you would use it or what's good about it. So yeah.
I absolutely do Google a lot of things as well. When I started giving graduates interview, I remember like, oh, I don't know the answer to that question we're asking them, or rather, I do not know anymore. I remember listening and studying it like 10 years ago, and I don't know anymore. So I went through actually doing the test myself in order to find out, and also because part of what we do in the interviews is, try and dig for that answer. If the person doesn't know the answer, is try and dig for it, try and help them, because like you said, Adam, we're interested in their thought process, in their problem solving skills. In terms of like getting like multiple choice questions or like programming question, there's a lot of themes that are recurring. Things like standard libraries often recurring. Things like 3D mass vectors especially tends to be quite recurring. My experience. I also see a lot of questions about design patterns. I often find it difficult to have to answer the name of a design pattern, because sometimes I know the pattern, but I actually don't remember the name of it. Um, stuff like that. At higher level, you start seeing things like multi-threading coming into play as well. Generally, that kind of topic. But I would say, yeah, standard library. Also, like, oh, what does code do is quite recurring, I think. So, like, you get a short snippet of code, and they're asking you what's the output. Does it crash? Does it compile or not? And that sort of stuff. So, my advice would be really, really double on code reading. That's something I didn't do much when I was a student, and I regretted it later down the line, that I didn't do enough of getting used to reading other people's code. And I wish I had done that more, so that'd be my advice. Get better at code reading, just find some GitHub, find some game jam project, try and get a short piece of code and understand what it does, write some notes, try and find out what the API does, because yeah, I really lacked in that early in my career, and I don't want people to fall into the same trap, I guess. Sarah, is there anything you'd like to add?
Not really. I mean, you guys covered basically. I mean, I've only been from the participatory side of the code tests and things. I remember doing some that were multiple choice, and they were really heavily about the use of the language in terms of like C++ and things like that. Covered things that maybe don't come up very often if you're just kind of dipping into programming, like bitwise operations. But then once you get, I mean, most programs I've done in C++ now have used them, but like, you know what I mean? So things that maybe are a little bit less common, some keywords that were less common. One, I had to write a data structure, a list from scratch. So not using the standard libraries, but writing my own. And that kind of, my computer science background really helped me there. I feel like if I just done games degree, I might not have known how to do that from scratch. So I was like, oh, but then the people who were interviewing me at the time also said, some of these they don't know the answers to. They just want to see what you can do. They want to see, like Adam was saying, they want to see your problem solving. And then I've also done some of the longer code projects, like Tim was talking about, and they can be fun. I use mine to kind of express myself and really stretch what I already had done in uni. Like I already had kind of thought about making my own little structure for almost like a little mini engine, and I just extended that, and that was really impressive to the people. So just stretch yourself with those as best you can. That's kind of my advice there.
Amazing. We've got a final question from the community, which is specifically about graphics programming. So it's kind of, how does a graphics programmer get started? The person says, I've got a good enough portfolio to impress, but there are no entry-level job in a discipline. Should I get into other discipline first and then transition into graphics programming? Anyone got any opinion on that? Any advice? It's a tough one. If you'd like, I'd get started. Oh, go for it, Sarah. Absolutely.
Well, again, so I worked at a smaller studio. I worked at Ninja Kiwi, and we did a bit of everything. So, and I'm not a graphics programmer, but I did some graphics programming there. So I guess my advice is maybe, from my perspective, is maybe look at some smaller studio jobs that are still using low-level languages. So not just using maybe Unity or something, but who are using maybe C++. Look for some of those. And because you'll probably do a bit of everything, and then just let your manager, your producer, whoever know that what you're interested in. That would be my advice.
Yeah, that was going to be my advice as well. So yeah, what Sarah said, do get maybe a smaller studio job or a generalist job to get you there, because generalist, I do gameplay, so I specialize in gameplay. But I know that generalist programmers, I did a bit of physics as well, actually, for a while. I didn't like it. But get into a generalist role where you touch a little bit of everything. And then do tell your manager, do tell your team, if somebody says, hey, I need somebody to look into that new VFX code, we need to find we need to refactor the VFX system. Does anybody interested in that? So like, hey, me, I'd like to do it. It's also about seizing the opportunity once you get the role. So yeah, my advice is if you can't find an entry-level role in a discipline you want, try and go for a generalist or maybe even a gameplay, because I know some gameplay people who started in gameplay at Ubisoft and they're no lead engine programmer. Gameplay and engine are still quite different. Engine is probably closer to graphics than it is to gameplay, right? And yet they did it because that's what they were interested in. And when we look at applicant at entry level at Ubisoft, we usually have gameplay and generalist role, but we also look at what's beyond. We can see from the application sometimes that the candidate has a keen interest in AI, in engine, in graphics, and we'll always try and help them and support them going in that direction if that's what they want. So make it clear in your portfolio, in your application during the interview process. Say, hey, I'm interested in generalist. I'm happy to teach a little bit of everything, but in particular, I love graphics. So if you've got any graphic tasks needing, that you need to do, then hit me up.
Yeah, graphics programming is like a super hireable discipline within programming. Like, we're often looking for graphics programmers and it's hard to come by good ones. So if you're looking for a job, I don't think you'll be looking for a job for long, but it is good to get your foot in the door. And like often when you interview at a place and you say, I actually, this is for a generalist role, but I'm actually really into graphics. Like lots of companies will sort of move the role around and say, we were hiring generalists, but graphics programming is kind of like stardust. So come in and we'll happily hire you and do that. So it's always worth applying for those general roles. And yeah, like all the other advice that we've been giving about portfolios and stuff, make sure it stands out and it's clear that that's what you want to do as well, because no one wants to hire a graphics programmer who reads like a gameplay programmer, because it's a very niche discipline really, but it's getting big.
Cool. I think we're pretty much nearly out of time. So either any final advice, or maybe you want to share like what's your proudest moment, or what's your highlight, or final words, final advice. Tim, you haven't spoken in a while.
Yeah, sure. So final advice for me is just stay positive. Even if you get rejections, just keep going, keep improving. We're all still learning. I'm still learning day by day. This is a discipline that's going to grow and change for the next how many years. So just keep your head high, keep applying, keep learning, keep improving. You'll eventually get there. Just it's your dreams, chase for it, work for it, just work hard, honestly.
Adam? Oh, Sarah, go for it.
No, go,
everyone's being quiet.
I'm sorry, that's the second time I did this to you. I'm so sorry.
So I just wanted to quickly answer, because a couple people asked something I noticed in Twitch. Someone asked me where I got my master's degree, Abertay University in Scotland. And also someone asked about visas. Game companies often will deal with visas. Mine did, especially if you're here for a student visa and you start working there and then they like you. They will often deal with all the paperwork and stuff for that. So don't despair if you are here on a visa. And then finally, my proudest moment probably would surprisingly be bug fixing, which I normally hate. But whenever you fix a bug that has been haunting your team for months, you feel pretty darn good. So I guess what that means is just persevere through the difficult times, because it will feel really good whenever you succeed.
I guess my final words of advice would be, like Tim says, keep going. If you're struggling, if you're getting rejections, that's okay. There's always other circumstances that are going on that are out of your control. So keep plowing on. Make sure you're updating your portfolio. Make sure you keep making games. It is all about experience. There's so much stuff that you can do now that is around games and will give you experiences that are super hireable. Like we spoke about game jams, but there's also kind of like a bunch of tutorials and a bunch of kind of like courses and stuff that you can go on to really like bolster that portfolio. And I would also say, like, make sure programming is the thing that you want to do. because there's a lot of people I feel like who really want to be in games, but they don't quite know what discipline they want to go in. So it's okay to explore those other disciplines. Like games programming isn't the only thing in games, of course. So like if maybe you're more of a technical artist, maybe you're more of a scripter, you really like the visual scripting side, because there's nothing worse than that kind of being in a role that you don't quite want to be in and try and push into other places. So yeah. And otherwise it's a really awesome industry. So please come and show us how to do it, because you're going to do that anyway.
Yeah. My final advice would be yourself. You are awesome as you are. We love you for who you are, no matter what you are, who you are, where you are, whatever, where you come from. Awesome. And you definitely can do this. The games industry is for everybody. And I say absolutely everybody. So is gaming in general. So yeah, that's the end of our panel. Thank you everybody for tuning in.